5 Sydney associations, as well as those north of the Hawkesbury, are in Grafton for the northern section of the half-state titles, with the under-14s competing through invitation only. 35 teams are taking part, and the purpose behind the championship is not only to find the best northern New South Wales teams, but also to spot those players who may make the state country squad. The Southern Division is holding their titles this weekend also, and the winners of each championship will meet to decide the overall title holders, from which the country team will be chosen. Host Grafton in the blue top and tartan skirt proved a handful for Campbelltown and took the game to their Sydney opponents. The final score, a 2-2 draw.
At the Palace last night, a small crowd were treated to a real thriller. The Newcastle Falcons were after an away double, and the former easy beats of the league hammered the Cannons in the opening quarter with Michael Johnson on fire. The Cannons went to import Jason Reese in the second quarter, and the tough shooter brought his side back to a 1-point lead, 60-59 at half-time. The third stanza was all Canberra as the home side blew away to an 11-point buffer. Newcastle of 92 are not the Falcons of old though, and they charged home to level the match on the bell.
He hasn't got the chance to. It's in overtime.
The Cannons went into overtime in trouble. Big men Jason Reese, John Stelzer and Simon Cottrell, all on the bench, fouled out of the match. As is so often the case, it was the General Phil Smythe who held his side together, nailing outside shots.
Smythe will man the General.
And making crucial steals. The effort and inspiration that led Canberra to a heart-stopping 139-135 victory.
In Canberra, Newcastle had a rock-hard edge.
A great hit.
Stewart was back for the Raiders, but Mike Hagan was dishing up the sweet passes for Newcastle.
Robble finds a gap. Matthew Robble outside of John Schuster. Unselfishly to break for a try.
5 minutes later, Hagan swung it the other way.
Outside is the winger, and he scores.
The Knights went out to 14-0. Canberra uncharacteristically without enough support play to reply. Just before the break, Coyne went solo.
Yes, a try!
Newcastle led 14-6 at half-time. Phil Blake's chip kick had the Knights in confusion. Another try to Coyne had the Raiders out to 18-14, but then Jamie Ainscough went straight around Gary Belcher.
They hit back the Knights,
Newcastle led 20-18, and though Belcher's 5 from 6 and a scrambling try to Mullins got Canberra home, Marquette could have at least drawn it for the night.
Karen Suwata was appointed as Senator last year following the resignation of Senator Paul McLean. Her shadow portfolios include education, science and technology. At the invitation of scientists at the CSIRO, she has spent the last 2 days in Armidale. Yesterday she visited the Armidale Wool Expo and then the CSIRO research laboratories. Today she was at the Armidale University, where she spoke to students and teachers about the problems of amalgamation. She believes it will be September before the de-amalgamation issue is discussed in Parliament, too long for all concerned.
I would hope that Minister Chadwick would be able to see the wisdom of de-amalgamating the campuses as quickly as possible, and possibly, if Parliament is recalled to deal with the other issues arising out of the Metherell affair, that the Minister could see her way clear to pass those amendments to the relevant legislation as quickly as possible.
Also on the agenda, Austudy. Tomorrow sees the release of the Chapman Report into student financial assistance.
It's no secret that Austudy levels are inadequate. They're below the dole. Many students are disadvantaged by the very narrow conditions under which they qualify, and so it's my hope that when the report is released tomorrow, that the government will act quickly to ensure that that more students qualify and that Austudy is at least set at adequate levels.
Because they couldn't understand they were driving alongside the road because they couldn't understand our age of the population areas. And when you're putting it together, can you mention we're at the driver education unit? I didn't realise myself the significance when I wrote it when you released it. Yep.
"18-year-old James Kenyon was heading north at about 3:30 yesterday from his home at Bowral when a Dodge tip truck collided head-on with his four-wheel drive on the Gap Road just north of Freeman's Waterhole. The Tokal Agricultural College student died instantly as the unladen truck ran straight over the top of his vehicle. The 32-year-old truck driver from Loftus in Sydney was unhurt. Accident Investigation Police will carry out a mechanical inspection of the vehicle. Just over 2 hours later, emergency crews were called to another horrific smash on John Renshaw Drive at Butteye, west of Newcastle. A family of 3 were heading back to their home at Narara on the Central Coast after a Mother's Day outing to Nelson Bay. 40-year-old Christine Morris was at the wheel. She died when her station wagon veered into the path of an oncoming Pantech. Her husband Alan and 13-year-old son Rodney were trapped in the wreck. They are now in John Hunter Hospital in a satisfactory condition. It's understood the parents were mourning the loss of their 18-year-old son, who died of illness just weeks ago. Police inquiries into the crash are continuing. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
Around the back, no, but we're not water.
The PM was still a backbencher when the optimistically titled portrait was painted. It's now the centrepiece of a travelling selection of works from the Archibald, Wynne and Sulman prizes being unpacked for exhibition in Newcastle. Mr Keating is in the mixed company of Bill Leake's murderer Chow Hayes, a self-portrait of William Robinson and Renaissance man Ken Doane. It's been 50 years since Joshua Smith graced a canvas, this time posing for Judy Cassab. Smith was the subject of William Dobell's controversial 1943 Archibald Prize winner. Rosemary Vallenden spent an ambiguous long afternoon with Dr Jermaine Greer, while Paul Grabowski has been captured in his morning glory by Wes Walters. On loan from the Australian War Memorial is Kevin Connor's Sulman Prize-winning impression of Iraq at the end of the Gulf War. And Newcastle artist John Earl captures his home port in a familiar style. The exhibition opens on Friday.
Council workmen made the discovery early this morning, but it was several hours before they notified police. It's understood the bones were uncovered as workmen cleared soil from the Cox's Lane underpass on the Nelson Bay Road. It was only after they had moved a substantial quantity of earth with heavy equipment that their suspicions were aroused. Bone fragments have been taken to Newcastle City Morgue for forensic tests. It's not known whether the bones are human or animal or even their exact age. However, scientific police and detectives are expected to spend several hours tonight sifting through tons of soil for more bone fragments. Tom Hilston, NBN News.
In all, $1 million has been spent on a new production room and its equipment and a staff amenities complex for the 145 employees. Bayview specialises in processed seafood for the catering industry and even exports its product to Singapore and Papua New Guinea. Ironically, the firm has to import all of its raw product because local suppliers cannot keep up with demand.
Because of the unavailability of the types of raw materials that we use in this country, we import all of our raw materials. A lot of our prawn products come in from Asia, but our fish products we bring in from South America.
The business had its origin back in the early 1980s and is now double the size envisaged then by General Manager Bob Haycox, and the expansion is showing no sign of abating.
We're still enjoying about a 27% increase, but we see we're optimistic that we can maintain a 20% growth increase from here on in.
And according to Bob, the reason for the success is simple.
If you're going to survive in this day and age, you've got to consider quality and economics and efficiencies in running a factory.
Bus stops were a lonely place today. At the depot in Hamilton, buses sat silent and empty. Schools were affected, students stranded at home. The strike sending absentee numbers through the roof. At Lambton and Warners Bay, the number more than tripled. In the Hunter Mall, trading was down. Some businesses shut up shop.
I'd say it's probably dropped by last week 50% of our sales, so it's really affecting us bad.
One group at least was pleased. Taxis did a roaring trade.
We had a very busy rush earlier this morning. Businesses opening and that.
Some commuters simply used private buses. Reaction to the strike was mixed.
I didn't know there was one.
I don't have much to do with buses, mate. I drive a car.
Yeah, well, I'm a coal miner and Nick's trying to privatise us too, so I've got to support him, you know.
I didn't know anything about it. I drive to work.
Doesn't worry you if our bus service is privatised?
No, not really.
The private sector is watching Newcastle's bus battle with interest.
I believe the private operator can do just as good a job as the government, and one of the reasons we could do that is that we have multiple shared jobs where the government employees, what I gather, it's one job, one person.
The Early Childhood Education Facility is the Royal New South Wales Institute for Deaf and Blind Children's first major regional undertaking. It's a fully integrated preschool catering for 24 fully facultied kids and 7 hearing and sight impaired or multi-handicapped children each day. But all didn't begin well, with the bushfire in October damaging part of the extensive building and all but wiping out the grounds specially laid out for the visually impaired.
Of course, you've had your dramas too.
Yes, definitely. Quite some dramatic ones at that, with our fire last year and various things going wrong with the playground area and that sort of thing, and everything having to be rebuilt again, but the staff coped very well with all that and so did the children.
Today, the 9 specialist staff and the children joined Institute board members in helping the chairman, Sir Garfield Barwick, cut the cake.
The idea to form a political party representing the state shooters came from Sydney broadcaster John Tingle. New laws introduced this month have angered many gun shooters, and they feel the only way to have their message heard is to join the ranks of those who make the rules.
The political parties are governed there by their machine, and irrespective of what some of the individual parliamentarians might prefer to do, the machine dictates the policy, and that is it.
Mr Young says although many members of the Wingham Rifle Club have not received formal details on the makeup of the Shooters Party, he believes it has a bright future.
I'm quite sure that a large number of shooters in this Manning region will be joining a political party that does offer something for the shooters to protect their rights.
Mr Young says the party could become a powerful force, adding up to 1 million firearms owners and supporters could join the party in New South Wales alone. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
On the 21st of this month, the people of Glen Innes will send a message to the Griner government, telling it they're not happy with its cutbacks in the town. Over the last year, more than 80 public service jobs have been lost.
It's losing all of its infrastructure services. What we need, in fact, to keep people out here in the country to produce our well, we do need them.
And the last straw came today with the announcement that the town will lose the position of Fire Brigade Station Officer by the beginning of September. Mayor David Donnelly says all shops and businesses will close between 12 and 2 when residents attend a public rally. Mayor Donnelly believes the government will cause the town to stagnate by taking all its government infrastructure and says residents cannot continue to sit back and wait for the next cutback to occur. They're also sending a message to the local member.
We're saying to our local member, Ray Chappell, you've got to do some more for us.
It may not look like it, but this is said to be the beginning of a revolution.
It's the biggest breakthrough within the shearing industry worldwide in over 130 years.
It's a simple adaptation. The traditional shear works in an oscillating style, cutting across the blade. The new blade works in a rotary motion and is contained within the shear.
We don't have a vicious open cutting mechanism. We have a very, very safe cutting mechanism, which is enclosed. We don't have any vibration which destroys the shearer's wrists, and also we can run the thing out of the wool all day and not get extremely hot.
Inventor Terry Park says his company has spent $4 million developing the project, but he expects it could return more than $100 million, with possibly 250,000 units sold each year across the world. The project is now heading to the production stage. Terry has had some discussions with Australian defence industries, and there have also been offers from overseas. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
200 librarians, shire clerks, aldermen and councillors are closeted for 2 days at Foster, talking over the problems faced by public libraries in country areas. By far the overriding consideration is how to provide a high-quality service to a relatively small population spread over a much greater area than Sydney and its suburbs. This is the 4th such conference, and the achievements in previous years include extra funding from the state government over a 3-year period. Today, workshops concentrated on management skills, technology and marketing. For a library, that means designing services tailored exactly to the needs of the community. Of particular concern is a growing interest being shown by young people. Tomorrow is the political side of the conference, where the many problems could be thrashed out. Mr Braybrook says the association's about to embark on a media campaign highlighting the services libraries have to offer and how best the community can make use of them.
A council decision to install 2 new sets of traffic lights in the CBD could mean outlaying the extra money.
The council's resolution looks at putting traffic lights at the intersections of Pulteney in Victoria and Manning in Victoria, and of course that's 2 additional or 2 new lights in an area where there's already 3 existing traffic lights.
The newly released city centre plan saw the changes as long-term, but council wants them now. But the RTA won't fund the lights until a new study is done on their possible effect on highway traffic flow and pedestrian movements.
Council has resolved to change some of the intersection details for intersections throughout the city centre, and some of those decisions were made ahead of final consideration of the city centre study that councils had consulted. In making those changes, the RTA have requested that we examine in detail the ramifications of those changes.
Council will consider the plan next Wednesday. A special meeting on Monday night will examine the city centre plan.
Betty and Don Grant call it their labour of love. A step into their modest weatherboard home come museum in Palamalawar is a step back in time. From sewing machines to irons, lamps and jewellery, the Grants have collected everything they could lay their hands on.
I'm quite happy for anybody, anywhere from a thimble to bulldozer.
Prized exhibits include an old telephone switchboard, which once helped hook up the northwest, and a 3-metre Indian matchlock rifle, which is believed to be 300 years old. There are other pieces that even Don and Betty can't identify. The couple have kept their collection under wraps for the best part of 40 years, but have now put out the welcome mat for visitors. They reckon there's something to catch everyone's imagination. But Don still has one great ambition.
I aim to have the biggest museum in New South Wales.
It's been known for some time that Bloomfield would close, losing money for at least the past 6 years and subsidised by the company's 2 open cut operations. The 40 workers will be redeployed or remain at East Maitland, eventually dismantling the site. Bloomfield management said today there's no hope of the pit reopening. Yesterday, opposition spokesman on mines, Pat Rogan, called for an inquiry into the Bloomfield closure and another, the Leamington No. 1, hoping to prevent remaining coal reserves becoming sterilised. Since the phasing out of the Joint Coal Board, Mr Rogan claims there's no government supervision of openings and closings of mines. The United Mine Workers have launched a campaign, Survival 92, to try and stop the decline in the mining industry due to slumped prices and threats to our world market share. In other industry news, the proposed $180 million airliner maintenance centre at Williamtown has been identified by State Development Minister Yamsley as one of several deserving fast-track status. Mr Yamsley has called on Canberra to speed approval processes by cutting federal bureaucratic red tape. Matrix Aeronautics already has state government permission to lease 200 hectares of waterboard land near Newcastle Airport. The maintenance facility could generate 1,200 jobs and be operational by 1994. Mr Yabsley's identified 7 projects altogether worth $1 billion and promising 20,000 jobs across the state, which could be helped by a smoother federal government approval process.
This was the Norman Ross warehouse on the Central Coast. It's now Graham Sharp's discount store, owned and operated by 11 former Norman Ross employees. When the retail chain collapsed in February, 30 staff in Gosford lost their jobs. Not willing to join the unemployment queue, Graham Sharp began planning a store of his own. He received some financial help from businessman Reuben Scarf.
He offered to finance it on the condition that I pay the interest to the Scarf Foundation to give away as a donation to a local charity every month.
But $120,000 was still needed, so Graham approached 10 of his former colleagues to become shareholders in the store.
They have worked their butts off, literally. They start to get paid as of this morning because that's when the money comes back in. There's been a big outlay, of course, on their side. A bit frightening to see the money all going out and nothing coming in for a few weeks.
For most, it wasn't an easy decision to make.
I put out all my superannuation long service from Norman Ross to go into this business. So it's all my life savings actually has gone in.
I had to give up every cent I had. They say don't put your eggs in one basket.
I had a mortgage, I've got 3 children under 6 years of age and found it really hard to survive on nothing. So we took a punt and Graham suggested and away we got in together. Yeah.
Going by today's sales, Graham Sharp believes their business will be a success and is supported all the way by his partners.
We believe for the same thing, so got a vision and we reckon we can handle it, so we're going to go all the way.
Almost a week after Transport Minister Bruce Baird called for expressions of interest in privatising Newcastle's government bus routes, Mr Carr visited the depot, which after July the 1st could be idle. The opposition leader first visited the drivers' union, joining ranks to oppose privatisation and to accept the petitions of thousands of people who think the same. But at least one driver in the union discussion was apparently sceptical of any government.
Now, me as an old-time Labor man, mate, I do not agree with governments justifying themselves in, as far as deficits and things like that go.
If you want to say there's no difference between us and the Libs, you've got it very badly wrong. We're opposed to privatisation. If that doesn't make any difference to you, we'll call it a day and you can live with Nick's policies.
But Mr Carr didn't call it a day. Instead, he headed for some of the 350 drivers who are fearful for their jobs. Not so warm was the response from some drivers who believe the fate of the Newcastle service has been sealed and Mr Carr has missed the bus.
Just political point scoring. It's been going on too long. As I say, it's been going on for about 2 years.
Mr Carr says the opposition will use every means available in Parliament to stop the privatisation. But he concedes once contracts are signed, it would be hard to place Newcastle buses back in public hands.
It's going to be very hard. If the government signs contracts and sells off facilities, then it's going to be hard to reverse. What I'm saying we've got to do is change the government.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Australia's the next one to go. They're going to wreck this country.
In his heyday, Crusher Cleal was one of the game's most devastating runners. But injuries have shortened his time on the paddock. For the past couple of years, Cleel has been an integral part of the English rugby league scene, and only a few days ago his coaching stint with Hull came to an end in controversial circumstances. So it's back to the north of the state to Inverell, where he will link with the Hawks and brother Les. It's thought that Noel will assist Les in the coaching duties and may even turn out on the playing field if his troublesome knee stands up to training.
They range from the tender age of 4 and 5 up to 15 years, and they only know 2 paces, stop and flat out, although some of the peewees, little jockeys, did come to grief. And some of the bigger kids needed a street directory to stay on track. Up for grabs this weekend, New South Wales state titles, and the riders are competing on machines from 50cc's through to 125s. The Lake Macquarie track testing both man and machine. 3 Newcastle athletes have qualified for the Hawaiian Triathlon, considered the World Championship, with fine performances at Foster and in Newcastle. Mick Jerd won the Nelson Bay Triathlon and did well in the Australian Ultra event. John Baxter did likewise, plus won the Newcastle event around the foreshore. And veteran Bob Scammell of Maitland has once again qualified for the real test in Hawaii. And 18-year-old Western youngster Richard Johnson has just signed a 3-year contract to play football with English Second Division club Watford, who played an FA Cup final in 1984. Richard has been in England since last year with Watford after a junior career with Western and Austral, and has already played one first-grade game for Elton John's club. But he knows all the hard work is still to come if he is to emulate Craig Johnston's feat in the old dart.
More or less I've done the easy part, so like this next season coming up, I'm going to have to get down to work and just get the job done.
It was the NBN Indoor Speedway Masters, and a near-capacity crowd warmed to the excitement generated by motocross and solo bikes, dirt and speedway sidecars in this inaugural indoor event. Over 50 riders converged on the centre to contest junior events on 80 and 125cc machines and senior titles on 250s, solos, sidecars and classical pre-1970 bikes. The Maitland Club had a big night, with Brock Parks on 723 winning the 9 to 11 years 80cc event and Brad Lamarsney successful in the 125 juniors. Phil Nash of Uralla stole the limelight in the NBN Indoor Masters with a brilliant ride taking out the prestigious championship. The sidecars weren't to be outdone, and in the speedway sidecars it was a win for Cole Richards and Miles Vickery.
The northern branch of the United Mine Workers Federation has applied to the Joint Coal Board for a research grant to document the illnesses that put miners and their families in hospital. Medical advisor to the Mine Workers Federation, Dr. Owen James, says their submission was prompted by 2 disturbing revelations. It was discovered that miners who worked at the Huntley Colliery in the Illawarra have a higher incidence of lymphatic cancer than the rest of the population. Also, a recent report found a link between brain tumours and the use of degreasing solvents in the Newvale No. 2 colliery on the Central Coast.
There's too much conjecture about whether working in a particular place is harmful or not at this stage because of the 2 previous studies which have been quite worrisome.
A spokesman for the Joint Coal Board says the submission is being considered. However, the organisation has received about 70 requests for funding from researchers who want to investigate the health and safety of mine workers. A decision about which project will get the green light should be made by August. Jane Anderson, NBN News.